All right. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone, everyone. It's Michael Lopez here for our fourth installment of Top Voice Tuesday. I have the great pleasure of Phil Kirschner joining me, and very excited about this conversation for a number of reasons. Before we get started, I do want to let everyone know that I'm putting all of these episodes on my YouTube page. This has been a bit of an inspiration for me to finally get all that up there. So our first three episodes will be on the YouTube page. LinkedIn makes it a little tough to find that sometimes. So that page is Michael J. Lopez 9. You can search and find it. It's pretty easy. It's also on my website. So excited to jump into a conversation about the future of work. And as a little bit of background, Phil and I met each other. We're both top voices. He's going to tell his story. We both share a history with this conversation, and both as consultants and I think as students of this conversation. So Phil, welcome. Excited to jump in. And for everyone who's online in the chat, please do put, where you're from. We'll take a couple questions. It's always great to see folks that are joining, and of course, you'll catch the replay. So Phil, do us a favor and give us a quick background story summary. How did you get here? How did you become a top voice? Let's start with that.
Sure. So I'm here in New York City, born and raised, unlikely to leave. I started my career in technology, but fell after about 8 years into the kind of course that I guess changed the rest of my life, which was in workplace strategy. I did that as a practitioner, built some, I guess, industry credibility as I was one of many people like trying to do something different as an occupier at my own company, learning by doing, especially not having come from the architecture or design or facilities or leasing or brokerage or any of those. Like I fell into real estate truly. Then left and led the workplace consultancy for the Northeast at JLL. So became like a real estate professional. I used to use LinkedIn when I was at Credit Suisse. I'd like share stuff or conferences I was going to, articles I saw. But now that I've gone back and looked at my own LinkedIn traffic, it was pretty sporadic.
Yeah.
Then I got to JLL. JLL taught me the term social selling, which I'd never really heard about before. It was nice to also go from gathering everybody else's research or saying, hey, here's this great thing, to being part of a machine that produced proprietary research and going, hey, look at our stuff. Like, this is our voice. My cadence went up a lot more. They were helpful to advise on like what your profile looks like to a client. Not that you're like selling services directly on LinkedIn, but people will look you up, and they did. I would walk into pitches and people say, oh, like you're not just a broker. You did this before. Like, right. yeah, I was in the, like that was in the proposal, or that was in the back, or maybe you didn't notice, but you actually went to look me up.
Yeah.
So that was nice. Then went to WeWork for 3 years to build a workplace strategy practice there. And WeWork, as I'm sure anyone listening here knows, like was very chatty about itself back in the Adam Newman days.
Very chatty.
They still are, but that, nice to have something to say with a corporate, if you could call it that, company-wide attitude of like, we've found a different way and there is a different way.
Yeah.
Please come with us. So like proprietary research and articles, a lot of people talking about WeWork and a lot of fascination about what was going on inside the machine. So again, pace kind of escalating, interest from within the real estate industry in particular. And then after that didn't work out the first time and I left it sort of the beginning of COVID, I found my way a year later to McKinsey, and it was really being at McKinsey at the intersection of their real estate people practices that gave me like the loudest and most trusted platform for not only getting to say my own things. Oh my gosh, look what McKinsey said. Where I was like, still me, just me.
Right.
But where I was able to share McKinsey's proprietary research, even though I had nothing to do with a little bit more of a lens of I now know these people and I know the context and can try to connect the dots for people who might not have caught all of it or might have been inundated by like, oh my gosh, McKinsey publishes a lot, which they do.
Right.
Or getting to be able to publish like even small blog posts up to very large, like well-researched articles, and finding that saying something on future work or hybrid or workplace and getting it onto McKinsey.com would land pretty heavily, like in a positive way, pretty
Right.
heavily to the industry. And it was early in maybe a year into there where the Top Voice program found me. And I think they were looking for more people, broadly speaking, in the hybrid and flexible work and office and like credible voices in that topic. And I was the loud one at McKinsey at the moment, at
Yeah.
that moment, and they found me, and it's been really fun getting to know the others like you.
I appreciate that. No, it's great. There's an interesting piece of that story that I experienced as well, which is your voice nested inside of another brand. And I
Mm.
think one of the things we've learned a little bit about is this idea that when you're an expert in something, and there's a lot of experts in a lot of different things, and you work for a bigger company, there is a challenge of standing out. You want to be compliant with the parent brand and the imagery, and yet you want to be unique. And it's a conversation that I know has come up quite a bit. How did you? I know you're sort of in a different space now. So how did you navigate that? And now that you're in your own kind of consultancy world, do you find it easier, harder, same, better, worse?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always had to toe the line a little bit, or
Yeah.
like understand how to do both. Even starting, I started my career at Credit Suisse, which is like Swiss bank, very big on secrecy. I started as an information security officer, so very sensitive to
Wow.
confidentiality, and used to educate employees on like what you put on the internet and how you sound. So that's
Right.
always been maybe in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess I've gotten away always being able to walk both. Like I will carry the company line and share the company research, but be able to maintain a personal persona that feels
Brand. Yeah.
professional enough. And I think since I've been viewed as genuinely not a seller, like I've never
Mm.
really been hawking a thing.
Mm.
It's always been like my own advice or my own experience or trying to kind of Sherpa people up the mountain
Right.
of advice me like I'm going to show you this or help you, but I'm here with you through this whole journey
Right.
that has created I don't know, or maintained a distinctive language that feels like my voice.
Yeah.
And I guess I got the most of it at McKinsey because the gauntlet to get stuff published on McKinsey's is understandably very hard, much
Right.
harder than it was at JLL, much harder than at WeWork. Much greater sensitivity to what you're talking about relative to your client work and or even potential client work and potential connections to clients.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like with their media training, the whole thing, and they like keep an eye on you. But
Here
yeah,
you are.
but I don't know. I think if I had to, I'm enjoying this moment of being able to cite anybody's research again because when you go to at JLL, all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I can't. I mean, I could, but I shouldn't point out that really great CBRE report
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
used to like to tell people about.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
so yeah, I don't know. It's hard. There's pros and cons.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that tune in and listen and ask about the Top Voice program, there's a big question about what do I share, how often, what's the right journey, and you're the fourth one on this now, and a little bit different than the others, and I think there's always a set of um, a set of standards, right? There's consistency, there's repetition, there's sharing things of interest, not just to others but to you, right? To have a kind of a narrative that becomes a consistent identifier of you and what you do. And so I want to jump into that and let's get into this conversation of the future of work. And so for those of folks that are listening in, you should have access to the chat. Please let us know where you're coming from and fire up a question or two. We love to sort of take those. So you and I, Phil, come from a world where this future of work conversation started, I'd say, in the 2010 range. Um, Take me back to the beginning of this conversation. Uh, when did it start, and what did we think was going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I should say at the outset, like we stand on the shoulders of giants,
For
like the
sure.
everybody who came before the 2010 conversation that was doing this work and doing the research, and obviously future of work in and of itself is not a new concept. We've always been
Right.
looking ahead of the impact of the printing press or the television or
Right.
the internet. That's
Right.
not new, but I think the sort of deep academic study of work led to that word really being bantered about more commonly, as you said, around 2010. And I find myself saying a lot now. If you Googled future of work and McKinsey or Deloitte or
Yeah.
Korn Ferry, whatever like side of the consulting world that you went back then, you largely would have gotten two themes: automation and let's just call it the gig economy, like things being done in more of a freelance way. I think there's always been this underlying tone of interest in generations in the workplace, which maybe accelerated a bit with the millennials, and I'm the oldest of them. But because yeah, I don't think there was ever the oh no, the Gen X in the workplace. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, the
Nobody.
millennials are here,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm a
and
Gen X person, and nobody talks about us ever. It's like we don't exist. So
but I don't remember the even like millennial conversation being that tied to the framing of future of work. It was just like, they're here now. What do we do? It's not it's not so much a change in the work itself as the concept of automation or sort of new workforce models were. And there's still a couple reports that stick out when I first started poking around into the topic that really got me thinking about, oh, this is a who, what, where, when, why, how, holistic conversation. Um, I don't think I was yet thinking ahead to the explosion of kind of remote work and the way that it happened. I certainly was thinking about the where and that I had fallen into the physical workplace. But oh, right, what work is uniquely human? And are we gonna be all like full employment for any one company one day? Like, are we going to shift from outsourcing models to more independent contractors? We weren't yet at Uber yet; those things like hadn't quite popped up. Um, so that was there, and then I think what just happened with COVID, unfortunately, and I even saw this at McKinsey, is that like the whole future work term got completely co-opted by remote and hybrid work,
right.
like just suppressed everything else. Even McKinsey's kind of future of work insights page, call it December of 2019, run by the McKinsey Global Institute, automation, flex models, right, labor. um, then COVID happens, and all of a sudden it gets kind of subsumed by the people organization, people practice, leadership through remote and hybrid.
Right.
And all the automation stuff gets just like pushed under. But then ChatGPT comes along, and now whoop, here we are again. So we've had we've had like accelerating moments for maybe two of the three topics: the where through COVID, the kind of who does the work in the robotics sense. What's our work? How are we relying on automation? That has accelerated. And the one we haven't had the break moment yet is on the freelance models. Maybe we already have for true gig work. Like my job is dictated by an app, right? That's how McKinsey and others define like gig.
Right.
We're comfortable with that one, but the freelance model of like wide scale adoption of independent contractors, not through large outsourcing agreements, coming in and out of your organization, that seems to be the next one.
Yeah. I have two reactions to that. So I recall I was at EY in 2016 when I led the future of work conversation for what we were doing, and we were trying to build a program. And I think you're right. COVID accelerated the remote hybrid conversation. Kaleem and I had a great chat about that last week about really where we are, and it's a great reminder of the power of these kinds of monumental shifts, socially and economically and demographically. But I will say, and you've got some hype in the chat here from Kelly about
Yeah, who I'll say, Kelly, if I'm like 100 feet that way in my bedroom, is your book waiting to be read. So thank you for that.
ah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I would say disagree with your comment about the generations, except to say that I think we were having that conversation about what is this new frontier of this new workforce coming in and what do they care about. I agree that we weren't analyzing it, I think, to the degree that we do now, but it started a conversation, I think, uniquely at the time, being in a big consulting firm. You have these cohorts of new people coming in, and you have senior partners that are also established in this world. And I think we were talking about it, but we weren't. I don't think we were solving the problem of and understanding the true generational mix of what COVID would do to this workforce in a way that I think now we couldn't have anticipated. We were just talking about it in an interesting way. Um, which sort of takes me to I'd love to get your view on that now. Like, what is the conversation around the multi-generational workforce now? Like, we skipped over it, but we've ended up in this new place. What's your point of view on that? What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong?
Yeah, I know. It's always at its simplest, right? Like people are, it's like nature nurture, right? I don't think the nature, or no, the nature of like being a human has not changed. It's the nurture bit, and like
Hmm.
we're affected by the world around us, and the major events on the historic calendar. I've even started like trying to explain this to my 10-year-old who pulled the phrase helicopter parent out of nowhere
Oh, okay.
to me. He's like, "Oh, you're a helicopter parent," and my brain moved like, "No, well, that's not my generation. That's the generation before me, and they're a product of the generation before them."
Right.
And all of a
That's
sudden, on
right.
the bus, I'm like, Grandpa grew up during the war, which was not an appropriate thing to say
Right.
to 10-year-olds, but but that is it, right? It's the major kind of global scale events, economically, geopolitically, that happen around you, and then more recently, like, when did you get one of these?
Yeah.
Like, when did you get one of these, and what was on it? Did you, I was overly technical, so I was using kind of devices in the early internet in high school. But for most of my millennial peers, right, it was like college or early at work, like, but email for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe started to have phones. We didn't grow up with smartphones. We didn't grow up with social media. Then you've got the kids who are like, the mobile is native, or the social media is native, or video is native, or now AI is native.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's affecting a little bit of their own perception of work. But I think a lot of it has just been tearing down the assumptions of the past
Yeah. I agree with that.
and tearing down the assumptions of the past and making it easier for you to moan about the thing you don't find to your liking.
Give me an example of that.
We used to complain about work, but like you can't. I said in the past, like you can't put the social media thing like back in the bottle. It is okay to talk about your life and your company and their company and politicians and whatever you want, like on the internet now. That's like out of the bag.
Right.
So we've always griped about work, my commute, like Sally in marketing. She gave me a real rundown in the meeting, or Bob's being a jerk. Like that's not new, but now being able to say like Bob's a jerk to your friend is totally different than going to Reddit and posting about your
Yeah.
manager, Bob the jerk. Like, and all of the reasons why it is abusive to work there. Um, so it's going to change how companies think about like those workers. But for the youngest set now, the younger we've gotten, I think it's just there's less tying you down physically and even financially. From the advent of the 401k, that was maybe the first one, right? You
Yeah.
no longer have to stay at this company for 20 years to get retirement. You can leave. Then it's like, oh, I have a laptop. That means you can leave. Oh, jobs are easier to find on the internet. You can leave. People are telling you on social media that things are terrible or what's going to happen to your company. You can leave. It's all like you
Right.
could leave. So now I'm treating work much more like I treat other consumer experiences. It's more of a retail decision.
Interesting.
I don't like
Interesting.
it here. I'm going to leave. The sort of younger you are, the more true that is. And then you just combine that with the very difficult ongoing economic situation. Um, it creates generations of people who will have less likelihood to stay because they don't either trust their employer or assume that they're going to be cycling through jobs more
Right.
quickly than maybe you or I would.
We had this debate a little bit, or this discussion that I think bordered on a bit of a debate when we were chatting about generational distinctions, and I think we agree on the. I love that term, like sort of what's native in your experience at the time that you grew up. Right now, I'm really going to date myself. Um, I'll just say it. I'm 51, so I'm in the Gen X window. I remember sending my first email in 1991 as a professional during an internship I had in Washington, D.C. Right. And so when I graduated college, there was a little bit of that, but not much. And of course, that informs a big part of your working experience and how things are developed and designed and the interactions that you have. And I think you're doing a great job of describing the the expectations of that native experience. Talk to me about the the folks that are nearing retirement, the folks that are, I should be a crusty old curmudgeon who doesn't want to learn something new, who's working on maybe the last vestiges of a pension that doesn't exist, or whatever it may be. What's your take on this phasing out generation, those of us that are at the back, the kind of the back nine?
The back nine, I don't know. Well, if you're on the back nine, my
I
father.
consider myself still, I'm just getting started, but I'm using that phrase hyperbolically.
Well, look, like I don't know, people are gonna live longer and economically, like, may not be able to sort of retire in the way that they thought in the past, and or have a huge part of their identity tied up with like their working life and what they've been able to see. Like my father is 82 and working, but works for himself, right? So I think maybe with aligned with like the gig and freelance model, as it becomes more and more common to have shades of gray in the sort of structure for how you're getting paid, right? Whether it's fractional employment or gig work, or SaaS platforms and creator platforms allowing grandma who like knits hats can sell hats now all over the world,
Right.
not that hard
Yeah.
if she wants, right? Or her enterprising grandkid is like, grandma, you should sell your hats, right? You can have income if you want in a way now, or a way now that you couldn't years ago, and may have people working in quotes
Yeah.
um, for much longer. But certainly, as I think we talked about, one of the big challenges is that like work has evolved in the past. Like, great, I don't have to use a fax anymore. I can email, or we can scan, and we can, Polycom phones. Those are like things that from our past were new, but they weren't like catastrophically new in the way that I think right in this moment, this sort of managing remote and hybrid and distributed workforces, ChatGPT seemingly doing half of your work, global mistrust in organizations and burnout and low engagement, all this like all at once is creating a pretty tectonic change. And
Yeah.
my hunch is that if I'm in my like 60s, late 50s, 60s, like it's already hard enough for younger workers and managers to change who are going to have to deal with this for 20, 30 more years. But if I've got single digit years left, it just like I'm not
What's
going to, right? It's easier to
right?
bury your head in the
What's the
sand. And frankly,
motivation?
that we see that a lot from executives
Yeah.
who are like, it would just be so much easier if we could hold on for a few more years and do it the old way that I learned up, instead of having me have to completely reinvent myself to run a modern organization.
Yeah. That's I think, and I want to talk about this AI conversation because we brought up the generations and automation and some of what got skipped over with the COVID experience, and now here we are. And I want to get to your 5P model, which I love. But I also want to acknowledge that what you just said. I mean, this is part of why I have a job, right? I mean, my job is to help people change. Truly, it's that simple, and it's that simple in a description. It's not that simple in the way that I do it, but so many people in my demographic and maybe slightly ahead are in this space of I'm fighting the wave, right? I'm trying to push back against what feels like a bit of an inevitable force, and I'm frustrated and I'm uncertain. I'm afraid to fail. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look incompetent, right? My value used to be defined by my experience and the quality of my decision making, and now I can outsource some of those things because I have the ability to research quickly, or other people can find answers, or they can do analysis and all of these things. And so talk to me about this point of view you have around AI and what it's doing and what it's opening up in this 5P models, and kind of bring us home with that, and hopefully take a question or two.
Um, yeah, look, it's a lot of this is change resistance, and change resistance isn't new. McKinsey would have you believe that only 30% of large scale change programs of any kind have ever actually succeeded and met all their objectives,
That's why I
which does not
started
mean
my
that the
own.
other two
It's why I
thirds.
started my own company. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Like that's not new. It's been literally the same for decades, just like sort of engagement has been in the same place for decades. I think one of the last posts I saw before jumping on was Keith Ferrazzi said something about like Oprah's done 30,000 interviews in her life, and the thing that holds them, or that's common amongst all of them, is every ultra famous person she's ever interviewed, like after the interview was done, says like, "Was that okay?"
Yeah,
And his point was about his vulnerability, right? And the
yeah,
reason people don't want to lean into new technology, especially the older you are, is because it's like it makes you uncomfortable, and it challenges your kind of power distance as a manager to ask the kid for help
yeah,
or like an idea. So getting the idea, the five sort of stages of AI adoption, which I think I quasi came up with on the phone with you and then posted about, um, was like a ton of people, if they've even started, are very much stuck at the level of like personal use of AI. Like, oh, ChatGPT gave me some ideas and I like went moving on in my day. It looked up a thing for me, it distilled a file, it summarized an email, it drafted an email. It's like, it's about me.
right.
And broadly speaking, the rest of the world has no idea that that's taken place. But then they're like, great, I've used the AI and I stay there. And they don't move up to the other levels where the next one would be going from like me, I to us, like around process. So personal to process, helping a group do something differently, which does involve everybody showing up with their own little printout. Like, here's all my meetings. Here's my sledge that I'm going through. Do you have this? And you go, oh, you have that too, or we all do that together. Let's fix that. It has to be a collaborative conversation. If you do that, in theory, by saving you time, it will allow you to take on new projects, level 3. So net new work for your group, whatever that means. That should lead to you making more money, ideally. So that's profit, level 4. And then I had originally said, I think changing your purpose. And I like that you gave me that it's really more about possibility, something you had even never considered because the data wasn't available, or you couldn't aggregate it all, or couldn't move at that speed, or you couldn't find a connection to something else. But yeah, I'd say Microsoft and others still say a lot of people are stuck at level 0, like they've never even tried it.
Right.
Increasingly, people will have dipped their toe and go, "Great, I don't understand what this AI thing is. It wrote an email. It's like not a problem." But the value comes from the higher levels, which someone's gotta like take you up to get there, especially for the people who are less technical or just more afraid of what it means for their job.
Yeah, and I think it so perfectly encapsulates, I think, where this future of work conversation has taken us, right? Which is, so much has become, I think, in many ways, dissolving the traditional boundaries of the organization. Looking at Kelly's comment, right, and sort of freelancing being
Totally.
so far behind, but it's dissolved the traditional boundaries of the organization. It's empowered the individual to be more outspoken, to be more present, to be more individually branded than ever. And now there's this new tool set that really does, I think, again, your sort of personal process, project, profit possibilities. you owe me $1 every time you say
Yep,
that to
totally.
somebody. So I'll just
Yep.
Venmo. You just send me there. Is this idea that I think the challenge for all of us is it's never too late to reinvent or evolve yourself. If reinvention feels too extreme, then it's really this idea of I need to evolve and I have more tools than ever at my disposal. I've just got to your point about power distance, right? I could use a different phrase, but I think it's all the same, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of fear. And I said this to my daughter yesterday on something different. You know, on the other side of your fear is a version of you that you never met but can't wait to meet. And
That's a good
there's
one.
a lot of opportunity there that I think if we can get through your hierarchy, truly the possibilities are endless. And I
Yeah.
think that's just a great summary to this future of work
Yeah.
conversation. So before we, sorry, go
No, no,
ahead.
no. Go ahead.
So we're going to wrap up, and I think, as I've told, I've stole a tradition from another podcast about this bonus question, and your bonus question is here for you to consider. So this was from Kaleem last week, and the question is: what is your most comical remote hybrid working experience that you've had in this new phase? The most hilarious
Oh, I don't
moment.
know, most hilarious, but I think I definitely posted about just by years of being technical, like a technical leader, computer science background. I post about like how I got a lot of stuff in front of me. I am still fully not immune to being on like very large scale calls. It happened once, like a year or two ago, forgetting that I wasn't on mute and like talking, I think, to my dog, it's just like, oh, going into like talking to your pet
Right,
voice.
right. Sort of baby speak,
Uh,
pet speak.
yeah, baby speak, like on a big call. And yeah, it was embarrassing enough that I remember posting about it, being like, no amount of expertise makes anyone immune from that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. And thank God COVID has humanized us. Where like other people have dogs, I'm like, oh yeah, your dog. Then I have to like share the picture of the dog just to make up for the fact that I've done it.
yeah.
It's a
That's
good
great.
question.
We all have, I think, to your point about humanizing it, there is this, you remember this phrase, right? Bring your whole self to work. And it was this idea of bringing your authenticity to the conversation. And I actually think there's almost a mundaneness to what we experience now, right? Dogs in the background, laundry going off, people coming in, the
Yep.
door, the Amazon person showing up. So I'm sure we've all had many of those moments as well. I certainly have.
Super.
Uh, so I just want to say, Phil, thank you so much
Thank you,
again for
Michael.
everyone hanging in. Thanks for joining us again today in this future of work conversation. If you missed the beginning, all of these episodes will be posted on my YouTube channel, Michael J. Lopez 9. Easy way to find it, and we will be back next time. Thanks so much, Phil. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Follow
you.
all your content. Follow Phil. He's the best,
And Michael, please follow Michael.
and we'll
And
talk
Kelly.
soon. Take care, everybody.